So it's with great pleasure that I want to introduce Rick Werber to you for an owner's perspective on our work. Thank you. Let's welcome Rick.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. How we doing? What a beautiful place, huh? One of my favorite hotels, and thank you for joining us. I know Rob Ball had to leave, I think, for a little bit, but I really appreciate the invitation and bringing me out today. Had a great session in Orlando, and looking to expound upon that. This hotel will always have a special place in my heart, as Bob indicated, and stole a little bit of my thunder. Danny was a regional director of engineering back in 1987, January, and we opened this hotel. Doug Rath was here. I don't recognize him because apparently he had hair and he was skinny. Of course, I had hair too. But there's a lot of great engineers who grew up and came through this property. And for those of you who were, in the IT field, there weren't a lot of systems. There was probably PMS and there was Marcia, and that was it. And that was back probably when telecom was actually a profit center, believe it or not. So we go back a long way. Great hotel and one of Host's premium assets, and we're just glad that you could give us some business today. So one thing I wanted to share with you, who's been to the New York area since, say, November? Show of hands. A couple of you. Anybody watch New Year's Eve on ABC? If you did, you saw this incredible light behind the stage. We're going to talk about value enhancement a little bit today. And for those of you who have seen it before, the upper left-hand corner is the New York Marriott Marquis, one of your flagship properties and certainly one of our flagship properties. And we talk about the best and highest use of real estate. And you talk about a Times Square address, and some really smart people got together and said, you know what, there's a better way to use the side of this building. And for many of you, you may have seen the drum. We shaved the drum off that building. And we built what is or has been the largest LCD, ultra-high-def TV in the US. That screen measures 330 feet as it wraps from 45th to 46th Street. It measures 78 feet tall. And it is, if you were to measure it diagonally, 2,632 inches. It's just a beast. It lights up. And we're actually having problems with our energy calculations because it is consuming nearly a megawatt hour a month, a million megawatt hours, I'm sorry, nearly a million kilowatt hours a month. And it is just sending our numbers haywire. So it's a great example of you're sitting on a piece of property, how do you make it that much more valuable? The advertising, you can imagine, is kind of crazy. Below it is going to be 2 stories of retail space. We hope that opens in the fall. We've actually taken out some of the parking below because who drives a car into Manhattan? You'd have to kind of be crazy. So again, highest and best use of the asset, adding value, and that's what I want to really talk about a little bit today. So before I begin, how many of you are in or have ever worked in a Host-owned hotel? Wow, we don't have that many hotels. Okay. So how many of you, when you saw my name on the agenda, were scared I was going to throw some incriminating pictures of your properties up? Okay, well, I've been known to send some of those pictures around a little bit, but you can relax because my legal department wouldn't let me do that today, as much as I asked and begged. So, one of the things I wanted to share with you is I spent 27 years in management with management organizations before migrating over into the dark side, as people like to say, of ownership. And I used to really think in the management side of the business, owners used to just kind of sit in their office and say no all day long. And I'm here to tell you that's really not the case. We're very lean, we're very mean, we work really hard, and we're focused on adding value for our shareholders. Now that said, I know that each and every one of you has a very demanding job. Often, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, by 365 days a year, you eat, sleep, and drink your properties. You're always on call. I get it, I've been in your shoes. And sometimes you feel underappreciated, and sometimes you feel beaten up. But what I want to really try to do today is to get you thinking a little bit more like an owner. Understand the perspective that we're coming from so that when you're dealing with your asset manager or your regional teams, that you can put yourself in a position of maybe being appreciated just a little bit more than you were before today. Okay, so first, as I begin here, just a little bit about Host for the 20 of you who have never worked in a Host hotel. We're the largest U.S. real estate investment trust. As you can see, we own about 139 global properties, about 100 domestic, and roughly 60% of those are Marriott branded products. So we only utilize the best management companies, the best flags. Focus is predominantly upper upscale and luxury tier assets, and you can see some examples. But we do business in 17 countries. We've got about 68,000 keys, and last time we took a look at it, we were about $20 billion in enterprise value. So every one of you is part of an organization or a property or a team that has a mission statement, right? Okay? This is my department's mission statement. I'm not going to bore you to tears. What I'm going to call your attention to is the red part, to enhance and maximize the value of our portfolio. That's what we live and breathe on the ownership side of the business. And let me help you understand how you can help us and get the recognition you so well deserve. So, owning commercial real estate is a lot like maybe owning a house, or maybe a better analogy would be buying stock. What are you trying to do? You want to buy low, right? There we go. So during the course of your ownership, you want to add value. Okay, and we'll talk about what that means because I keep saying it, but I'll show you in just a couple minutes. You want to spin off some cash. Stock is, maybe some dividends. If you own a house, you might put some solar panels on the roof and generate some extra cash in your pocket. And then ultimately, you want to sell it high. Now, there are organizations out there, and I understand this, and I didn't really read that disclaimer before, but different ownership entities have different strategies. There's no doubt. We are not a flipper of assets. We don't buy, renovate, and sell that quickly. We generally are in it for the longer haul. Your owners may differ. And that said, please understand that the opinions, the information that you see on the deck here are really that of Rick Werber and Host Hotels and Resorts. And again, you may have to figure out how it fits within your owner's strategy. But pretty basic, right? Buy low, sell high. So back to that value. What does it mean to an owner? And have you been in owners' meetings before? You don't get to go to owners' meetings? Well, that's the first problem. You need to attend owners' meetings. If you have the opportunity, sit in those owners' meetings. You're going to hear, I guarantee you'll hear your asset managers talk about the concept of capitalization rate, okay? If you do nothing else while I'm up here, write down the formula I'm about to give you. It took me 6 years of asking to figure it out because I think it's some sort of a secret that asset managers keep to themselves. So cap rate is, simply stated, is net operating income divided by asset value, or the value you would expect to buy for the hotel. So if you have two of these variables, you can solve for the third. Another way mathematically to express it is simply NOI divided by cap rate. And you guys are like, what are you talking about? We're engineers, we're IT professionals. We're not finance people. This is really important. So let's go through a basic example. Let's assume that you got a side business and you're looking at evaluating for purchase a property. It generates, or you're going to spend $100 million and it throws off $10 million in net operating income. Okay? Basically profitability. So that's not bad, right? I get $10 million for my $100 million investment. After a while, I'm going to break even, right? So the question is, what is the cap rate? It's basic math, folks. So just as a refresher, right, the cap rate is equal to your net operating income, your profitability, divided by the asset value. So in this case, pretty simply stated, 10 million divided by 100 million is 0.1, 10%. So your asset manager might say, we bought the hotel at a 10 cap. It's pretty much that simple. And the cap rate is going to be determined by some really smart finance people. And the greater the barriers to entry, the more prestigious the real estate, the greater the likelihood that the property can value, the greater the cap rate is going to be. So that's a really basic example. So let's take a look and see how it might apply in each one of your properties. There's basically two ways that you can enhance value. It's pretty simple, other than just the real estate market going up, which you've got no control over, right? So one way is by increasing not just revenue, because you can add revenue that's not profitable, right? We've all seen that happen before, but increasing profitable revenue, probably in support departments like engineering and IT, probably doesn't really apply a lot, maybe more on the IT side, or in reducing or decreasing operating expense. So this is what gets an asset manager really pretty jazzed, pretty excited, is decreasing operating expense. And what you're going to see, because the mindset, the paradigm is that the reason for that is I've got increased profitability during the course of the month, the quarter, the year. And I'm here to tell you, yeah, that's important. But the vision is much longer range than just the period, than the quarter and the year. The focus is on enhancing the value of the hotel when you go to sell it. So what I want to do, and it's maybe a little bit difficult for those of you in the back of the room to read, but if you take a look at the example on the board, what we've got is an example of two profit and loss statements. On the left-hand side, you've got a property that generates revenue of $25 million. Everybody see that? $25 million in sales. And then there's some operating expenses, and the current utility budget is $1,550,000 circled in red to the left, okay? So the question is, what happens if we can put into play an investment that's going to save $150,000 a year on a sustainable, not meaning green, but on a basis where you can repeat that $150,000 savings year in and year out? Well, on the right-hand side, you can see we've done that example to say, okay, I don't know what we've done. We put an energy management system. We put variable frequency drives in. We put new chillers in. Oh, by the way, I remember walking through this hotel in 1987 with John Sipes' father, okay? I don't know if you remember that old nut, but he was a great guy. I loved him like he was like my father. One of the smartest guys you'll ever meet. And he was really the grandfather of energy management and sustainability at Marriott. And I just remember walking through the central plant at all this glistening, enormous equipment. Because you got to remember that prior to like 1984, Marriott was a small box hotel company. Mostly 300, 400, 500 rooms. Started getting into the Atlanta Marquis, the New York Marriott Marquis, Orlando World Center, Desert Springs. That was really the foray or the entree into these big box hotels. So we're walking through, looking at these enormous chillers and enormous boilers and other systems. And I just remember as a pretty young kid thinking, wow, whoever's got this hotel has got it made. And what I can tell you is that last year, was like deja vu. Danny and I and others, a team of really smart people, replaced two 1,250-ton chillers. And believe it or not, that technology that was 26 years old resulted in annual energy savings, even after we added capacity to be able to provide cooling for a change to the Mikando's restaurant in Building D here. But even after we added supplemental cooling, we ended up saving on average $175,000 to $200,000 a year just by upgrading the technology. So a lot of times, just normal end-of-life system replacements will generate those kinds of efficiencies. So bottom line is, pick an example. You've all done energy or ROIs, or at least the engineers in the room have. So now we got a utilities line item of $1.4 million kind of on the after side there. Okay, so when you look at the basic math on the left-hand side, you got a bunch of expenses, you got management fees, that's what we pay you guys, net operating income of $5 million on total revenue of $25 million. Everybody's seeing those numbers, everything's with the 3 zeros, right? So the hotel value, which is nothing more than, again, your net operating income divided by the cap rate, and we're assuming a 10 cap here like we did before. So that hotel is valued at $50 million, basic math. Okay? We got a $50 million, so that's what you would expect to sell or buy the hotel at. But on the right-hand side, look what's happened. Because we saved that $150,000 year after year after year in operating expense, that actually increases the value of the hotel by $1.2 million. That's what gets an asset manager excited. We've added $1.2 million when we go to sell that hotel, and we did that by putting the new chillers in addition to saving the $150,000 each and every year on a cash flow basis. We enhanced the value of the hotel. So what if we were in a place like New York City, or maybe Naples on the beach, or Marina del Rey, where we know we're going to have a higher cap rate? We'll take a look now. The before scenario, the cap rate had a valuation of the hotel at $83.3 million. After we saved the same $150,000, we've increased the value of that hotel by $2 million, okay? Just based on the market and the demographics and where we are with that asset. So one of the things that you might ask is, okay, that's great for you, Mr. Owner, but what about me? What about me as the operator? So does everybody understand or familiar with the concept of IMF, or incentive management fees? All right, that's something your GMs are probably pounding you about. You know, we're close, we're within striking range. We can really start to generate some incremental fees for Marriott. So in this particular case, this hotel is in what we call incentive management fee territory. And what it means is that a percentage of the savings comes back to the hotel operating company, in this case Marriott. So what you can see is by saving $150,000 a year for us, you've actually added at a 20% IMF, $30,000 goes directly into Marriott's pockets. So every time you do an ROI, and your brothers and sisters across the country do ROIs, and you're within IMF range, it's a fair amount of money. So give that a little bit of thought. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's talk in more general terms. You know, we employ the best management companies. I mentioned that before. Consider yourself best in class. We consider ourselves the same. We ask you to manage our business and the reservation systems and the guest experience and all the things that you're probably talking about, you know, at this meeting and back in your properties. But we also have a very high expectation that you're going to manage our physical assets on our behalf, because as a REIT, we're not allowed to manage our own hotels, all right? We can manage renovations, but we can't physically manage our hotels. That's where you guys come in. So looking at, it's a series of puzzle pieces. Lots of different ways to state this. But what I would say is that the one thing that has me very excited about Marriott is your systems, your structures, your operating policies and procedures. I know that when I walk into any one of our hotels, it's going to be the same series of policies. You've got Transcendent, which is a phenomenal management information system, but clearly only if you leverage it, only if you use it effectively. And that is absolutely essential, because we really want you to the point where you're utilizing your tools, where you are making good, strong, informed, data-based decisions. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I get capital requests or complaints, hey, I need new chillers, I need new boilers, and the question is, well, why? Because they're old. Okay, well, I'm old, my wife hasn't kicked me out yet. So, so what's the data say? What's the efficiency of that equipment? What would new equipment be from an efficiency standpoint? What's my repair and maintenance looking at? Have I done the 10-year teardown recently? Can I avoid spending $60,000 or $70,000 doing a teardown if I replace that equipment? It's all a financial decision. How many condenser plugs or tubes are plugged, right? What's the result of the eddy current, the vibration analysis, the oil analysis? That's the kind of data that we expect from strong managers like yourselves to be able to make investment grade type decisions. Root cause identification, analysis, and solutions. Look, there may be owners out there that are looking for you to throw a lot of Band-Aids on stuff, and there may be cases where we don't necessarily want you to spend a lot of money, but you need to be able to communicate to us where you have problems, and our focus is generally to ensure that you're doing root cause analysis, that you're not Band-Aiding the symptoms, that you're addressing issues, because we don't want them coming up later on. I can't tell you, and we'll go into this in a little bit more detail, the number of renovations we've done. We start tearing out ceilings, and what do we see? We see bus pans. We see some very elaborate interior gutter systems. Any of you guys seen that in your hotels? We see trash cans that sit in wall cavities under leaking valves. We see all kinds of stuff, and it infuriates people within our organization. I'm willing to bet, and I defend you guys all the time, but I'm willing to bet that quite often you don't even know this is going on. An engineer, a maintenance mechanic gets dispatched out. They do what they think is right. They might not know what is right. So that's where your engagement, your involvement, and making sure that we understand what the proper fix and the proper solution is absolutely vital. Accurate 10-year CapEx planning. I'm going to talk about that. I've got a full slide. Intimate knowledge of your building systems. Again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I think in many cases, some of you may have gotten away from the basics. Your jobs have become highly administrative, highly political in some cases, and I think it's really important that you understand your building systems, what the design intent of your building is, and how all the systems are designed to work. You can't speak intelligently, especially when an owner comes by to do a renovation, unless you understand that. We talk about optimized efficiency and performance. We can sit there and install new chillers. We can put new energy management systems in. We can put in-room energy management. But unless you're going to manage those systems and ensure we're leveraging the technology, it's kind of pointless, because it's never going to generate the return on investment. Just having the technology, just having the system is not good enough. We fully expect that you manage and get every last dime out of the installed systems that you possibly can. Nothing frosts me more than walking through a mechanical room and seeing all these switches that are set to hand position. There's always an excuse. There's always a reason why it's there. But we know the one thing, right? You don't trust your systems. Your engineers don't trust your systems. I fully expect in our buildings that the majority of equipment is set to automatic mode. And if it's not working properly, let's get those systems working properly. And then last but not least, show-ready properties, front and back of the house. There's always a focus, right, on the public spaces and the guest-facing areas and making them pretty and renovating guest rooms every 7 years and all the stuff we talk about. But, I fully have the expectation that our back of the houses or our heart of the houses show similar You don't have to eat off the floor. The copper doesn't need to be polished, but equipment rooms need to be locked. Insulation needs to be in place. We don't want puddles and pools of water and other liquids on the floor. We want to make sure that the plant is properly maintained. And we also know that when you do that, more than likely it's going to be a very efficient type of operation as well. So communications. I'm not even going to ask this question, but I know some of your GMs tell you over and over again, don't give the owner any bad news. Doesn't like bad news, right? No hands, but do I get a yes every now and then? Yeah. Okay. And you know what, I'm going to be honest, I mean, we don't like bad news, but I'd rather have the news and know what I'm dealing with than not have the information and be surprised when a $1,000 problem turns into a $1 million problem, okay? So I think it's really critical and essential that you're communicating intelligently, present solutions, not just problems, right? But that open and honest dialogue is critical. Again, we hate surprises. You know, and my recommendation is there's a couple of key things that you should be contacting your ownership about. One is compromised operations, right? We just had a flood. We got 20 rooms out of order. You know, we just lost our #1 steam boiler. We have no heat in the building. It's going to be 36 hours before I can get a trailer-mounted rig in the back dock and connected. Emergency capital funding. As soon as you have an idea, let us know. Capital budget questions, risks, concerns. Look, we're not always going to say yes to everything, okay? We got a limited pot of money that we're dealing with, but it really helps when you present the business case for an investment that we understand what is the risk of not replacing that chiller? What is the risk of not refurbishing these fan coil units when we renovate the guest rooms this year? And then we'll talk a little bit more about disaster management and recovery. And that's an important thing that, you know, can come absolutely out of the blue and can be devastating to an owner like Host. So, you know, we talked a little bit about understanding your building, and it's the fundamentals. It's kind of spring training. We all, you know, watch our favorite baseball teams go back and kind of learn how to catch and throw and hit and pitch and learn the signs all over again. But I'm going to tell you that this is the one major observation I have, that we've gotten away from the basics. And some people, sometimes it's because a lot of you are administrative, sometimes it's because that first wave of engineers that opened the property retired within the last 2-3 years. I've walked into buildings and I'm more knowledgeable than the DOE and the engineering staff because of the turnover that we've experienced. That's kind of a frightening thing. But if we look at, you know, HVAC as an example, and I know Doug is probably going to touch on this at some point in time. Understand that your systems are designed to work together. You have makeup air systems, you have exhaust systems, right? We walked into a building, actually one of my first site visits ever, and I go up onto the roof, and there is a corridor makeup air unit that literally has an EPDM membrane, and it is roofed over, okay? The air handler unit supplying 100% corridor makeup air has been roofed over. Obviously, it's not working, and obviously, it was so badly deteriorated that it was creating leaks into the building. That's a problem. You just can't shut off makeup air systems. Makeup air systems to kitchens. We see that time after time after time. So you have to understand, how are your guest rooms getting their makeup air? Do you know what the CFM rating is of your bathrooms? We expect you to know that. Is it something more than 35 CFM? Because if it is, there's a good likelihood that we can probably put in a constant exhaust register. We can throttle back on your makeup air. We can keep the building positively or neutrally balanced, and we can save some energy money, right? Important stuff. Fire and life safety. We, owners, developers, spend a ton of money on smoke control systems, as an example, right? When was the last time, number one, you tested your smoke control system? When was the last time you saw your stairwell pressurization system work? Do you even know if you have a post-event purge and does it work? Chances are, if you have had building automation system upgrades, if you have put in a new energy management system, there is a high degree of likelihood that there are problems with those smoke control systems. And it's one area that every time we do a fire alarm system replacement, and I probably have done 30 in the 6 years I've been at Host, almost without exception, we end up spending up to hundreds of thousands of dollars recommissioning the smoke control systems that are critical to the life safety of the building. Domestic sanitary and storm risers, big category, right? Everybody know what a SOVent system is? Do you have a SOVent system? If you have a SOVent system, do you know how to maintain a SOVent system? It will come back to bite you. If you Google SOVent, it was a value engineering initiative that basically reduced a lot of pipe on your sanitary systems, but will cause you problems, dating back to the 1980s, but will cause you maintenance nightmares going forward. You can bank on it if you haven't already experienced that. We recently renovated a non-Marriott hotel, and we had the first rainstorm, and all of us, we started on the top floor like many renovations do, and before we knew it, we had all this water coming into the top level of guest rooms. Thinking, what's going on? We thought we had a roof leak. No, we found out that all the cast iron storm drains were cracked. Years and years, expansion, contraction. We had to stop the project. We had to get up in that interstitial space, and we had to make $100,000 worth of repairs to those systems. Critical that you understand that. Electrical and emergency power distribution. You guys are pretty good about your thermography, pretty good about load bank testing. When was the last time your high voltage switchgear was PM'd? That's a question we have all the time. And what would happen if you lost those transformers or those switches? It's enough to cripple a building. And in many cases, some buildings don't have the redundancy that you need, and it can create some major problems. So if nothing else, hopefully I've given you some food for thought, because you do need to be intimately familiar with the design intent of your systems and building. So when I say don't have a condo mindset, anybody know what I'm talking about? So anybody ever owned a condo? Typically you own what? From like that inner coat of paint in? It is amazing how many properties I go to and say, so what kind of roofing system do you have? I don't know. Is it EPDM? Is it TPO? Is it a puff system? Is it a modified? I don't know. Then if you don't know what you have, because that's the owner's responsibility, how do you maintain it? How do you inspect it? How do you know what to look for? Get yourself educated. We've got consultants. I'm sure your owners have consultants as well that can assist you. Critical to inspect those systems. We can't do it all the time. There's maintenance involved. Warranty administration. We have situations where we are using roofing systems, right? They're integrated roofing systems. And you can't hire Joe, the roofing contractor, who spends his life putting up 3-tab shingles on residential houses, to come pound a couple of roofing nails, into a very expensive system. We had that happen, unfortunately, as in one of your hotels. They made some repairs over the electrical switchgear. They drove some walls into some counter flashing. We had a lot of leaks. I'm sorry, we had a bad rainstorm. Storm drain couldn't keep up. Water rose. Water went through the nail holes, flooded out the switchgear. We had to close the hotel. Not good. Had we brought out an authorized contractor to do those repairs, we would have never had that issue. And it was a mess. It was custom switchgear that had to be ordered. Warranty management. We've gotten so frustrated now that if you get a new roof system with us going forward, we've got this big stop sign that we're posting at the entrance to every single one of your roofs. And it says, stop, roof under warranty, here's the warranty number, here's the claim, here's who you call. because we just need to make sure that we're spending good money for those 15 and 20-year roof warranties. We want to make sure that we're using them. And with turnover that we've seen, it's very easy to get away from that. And that's money out the drain, down the drain. So let's talk about renovations. So this can be probably one of the most stressful times of your life, because I sit here and tell you, we want you to operate this building like you owned it. We want you to be personally invested in your hotels, right? And then all of a sudden, this design team invades, and they tell you how it's going to be, and they basically push you to the side, right? You've all been in a situation? Yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable. So what I would say is that you have a role, and it's very important that you be a strong player and provide that institutional and historical knowledge of the building, because nobody else has it. If there are issues in your building, right, that are going to somehow impact the renovation, you need to be communicating that early and often. If nobody chooses to listen, they choose not to listen. That's their fault. But you need to tell them. Plans, specs, as-bills. I can't tell you the number of times we go into a building and we say, where are your blueprints? And we go into the boiler room, and in a corner, all mangled, half wet, are the blueprints. Those are gold, okay? Your plans are gold. Please, please treat them that way. Keep them orderly, keep them organized, keep them clean and neat. Need you to be engaged early during that scope definition. They might not always listen to you, okay? But you can't expect to tell at the kickoff meeting the way the project should go down. That's not going to work. So as early in the process as possible. And I know we're doing our scope checklist up to a couple years in advance of many projects. And this is kind of a reiteration of the first one: research and communicate relevant existing building conditions. If you were doing a rooms renovation and you know that we have failed piping insulation, which is creating excessive moisture, and mold in your building, but it's seasonal, it only happens in the summertime, you still need to let us know. We literally had a building where a guest leaned back after we did the renovation and put his elbow through the drywall underneath the air handling, underneath the fan coil unit. Seriously, put his elbow. And then we realized we have a major problem. We just spent 20, 30 million, whatever it was, on a renovation, and then we had to go back and address that issue after the fact. So if you're new to a property and you know we're going to be renovating, or your owner is going to be renovating space, understand the pipe conditions. Will your valves isolate? What about the air handlers that will be servicing public space and all that sort of thing? Absolutely essential that you provide that information. Be aligned with the PM and design team. Don't be seen as an impediment or an obstacle, and be realistic. Just because the renovation is going to take place doesn't mean it's going to cure all evils. It won't fix every problem that you have. Again, don't take things personally. Make your point known, okay? Because eventually that team's going to leave. And cooperate. We talked about this a little bit. So there are other times that we're asking for you to actually be the project manager, right, rather than bringing a third party. And I think this is pretty common sense. Brand and owner standards, use your own specifications, use your own standards, pre-qualify your consultants, make sure that you're not having to kick contractors and engineers off the job. Make sure that you really develop a thorough and thoughtful scope. That's really important. So that at the end of the day, when you get your bids, you have apples to apples to apples, not apples to bananas to elephants. And communicate, your evaluation, the recommendation to ownership on contracting, and provide us with updates on how the project's going. So from an information technology standpoint, we, as many owners, are members of the Owner and Franchise Technology Advisory Council. One of the things that I will share with you is we, along with others, are frustrated by the technological revolution that we're all experiencing. As I mentioned before, there was a time that PBX was a profit center. Video on demand was a profit center. You know, to a certain extent, high-speed internet was a profit center, and all that is going away, right? So we're investing a lot of money, and we see 1 minute we're at the top end of the guest satisfaction continuum from a quality of high speed, and the next minute we're at the bottom, and that happens in, you know, a period of 18 months. So one of the things that we're really focused on, and we really need your help, is to assist us to the greatest extent possible with future-proofing our building. We want to make sure we're putting in system-agnostic equipment, infrastructure that is going to support us. You know, I'd love to say 15 or 20 years. We know that's not practical, but that's our intent, is whatever the cabling technology is, we want that to last as long as it possibly can, given the investment we're looking at. You know, and then you take a look at all of the various in-room entertainment and ancillary type systems, whether we're talking about TV platforms, and we know where you guys are with respect to TV platforms and Wi-Fi and integration of RFID lock sets and in-room energy management systems in mini bars, and are we going to the telecom PBX in the cloud? There's a lot of decisions that can be overwhelming, but ultimately what we're looking for from you is to explain the technology, why it makes sense, cost effective, CapEx, first time cost, as well as operating expense models. Sometimes it doesn't always seem that way, but we do support your brand standards. There's a lot of costs coming at us from different directions, so it's not an easy thing to do. But you need to continue, even from a technology standpoint. Is there an ROI opportunity? Will this technology lead to new repeat guests, enhanced revenue? Think back to the value proposition. Think back to what we just talked about. Think like an owner rather than, you know what, it's Christmas time and I need. Help us understand why it's going to reposition this hotel more favorably. And present the business case. We talked a little bit about that. You know, we really do believe, I think like a lot of owners do, in proof of concepts or pilots prior to full-scale rollout. You know, and at the end of the day, I would imagine that many owners feel the same way, but we don't want to be on the bleeding edge of technology, so we want well thought out solutions that make sense for the hotels and the markets and our customers where we do business. Budgeting. Capital budgeting, it's a year-round deal. It's part art, it's part science. And what I would tell you is that if you wait 2 weeks until your budget is due, you're probably going to be, you will have waited too long. Our focus is going to be on just-in-time sort of replacement. So understand that, you know, there are scenarios where we need to look at refurbishment versus replacement. And again, understand the business case. If refurbishment at the end of the day is going to be more expensive, we're going to have energy efficiency from replacement. We want to understand, again, those business cases. You want to be talking in advance as possibly as you can with your asset management, letting them know, hey, look, our elevators are getting to that point in time. Our fire alarm system is going to be obsolete and it's not going to be supported by the OEM after 2018. So we need to start thinking of what's going to happen. And again, as you're trying to make the business case, provide pictures, explain what the systems are costing you to operate and what the potential savings are. Use expert opinions and not just any mechanical engineer, because a mechanical engineer will come in and say, it's 15 years old, it's old, you got to replace it. That's not necessarily the kind of expert opinion that we're looking for. We're looking at data-based decisions, as we talked about earlier. Environmental and moisture management. Environmental issues can get out of control in a hurry. You know, you need to be able to focus on what is systemic versus isolated. If you've got isolated events, clean it up and move on. If you've got systemic, where the pink mold is starting to permeate all your vinyl wall covering on an entire elevation or multiple floors of the building, we've got an issue that could cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to remediate. We've got our asset managers asking for copies of your moisture management plans. Legionella, what are you doing to comply with ASHRAE standard 188P? We want to make sure that your systems are in compliance. With us, it's very important before you do any sort of indoor air quality testing, mold testing, anything like that, we want you to contact us. I would imagine most owners feel the same way. We don't want that smoking bullet being out there. Isolated, we talked about that. And those systemic issues, where you do have systemic issues, are critical that you communicate quickly. Emergency preparedness, we do a webinar at the beginning of each hurricane season. Bottom line is we need a plan, continuous communications before, after, and during the event, if you're lucky enough to have advance notice, like in the case of a hurricane or a cyclone. Please document your losses, make sure that you understand what the costs are, take lots of pictures, utilize pre-qualified disaster restoration. And at the end of the day, we're focused on asset preservation and minimizing business interruption. Those are the two most important takeaways from this screen. Owners meeting, what a great opportunity to quantify the value they're bringing to the table. What have you done to reduce operating expense? What have you done to replace utility expense? Articulate your sustainability program. This is key, this is really important. So what are you doing to compete with the others on your on the same block? And tour the property. Get your asset manager out of the hotel. Plan your route when you do tour your asset manager. Be a show-off. Show them where you've been working, where your team has focused their energy and efforts. But don't cover up. If there are areas that are lackluster, areas where you know that you have needs and are going to be focusing in the near future, explain to him or her what your plans are to enhance those areas. It's a great opportunity to talk about your 10-year plan. Show them what a chiller is. Show them what a cooling tower is. Show them where your roof has been mended and patched so many times that it's starting to now pull away from the parapet walls. Point out ROI opportunities. Again, get them engaged, get them excited. So just summarizing briefly, and they gave me 15 minutes more today, and I've already gone past that. Open communications, limit the surprises. Know your building. That's just a really, really important one. And that's, whether I'm talking to engineers or technology professionals, same thing. Understand your building. I go into a lot of building and I ask IT questions and nobody really knows the answer. Take pride in the building, just as if you owned it personally. During that renovation, ultimately, that project team will leave and you will be back to running your hotel. I guarantee it. Let's try to avoid bleeding edge technology. We've run into that with other brands. We've had some absolute disasters. We've thrown a lot of money away, and we're not looking to do that on a repetitive basis at all. You know, understand what value is, quantify the value, and articulate the value that you bring each and every day. And again, we understand that you have a very demanding job. You leave it all out there. You leave blood, sweat, and tears in your buildings, and you know who you are. And I get the calls over the weekends, and I get the calls all night long and emails, and we really do appreciate, and I'm sure other ownership groups do the same, that what you bring to the table, it's not a 40-hour-a-week job. It's not a 50-hour. It's nonstop. And for that, we really are most appreciative of the job that you guys, men and ladies, do each and every day. So with that, I do have a technical glitch. I think the next screen was thank you, and I appreciate your dedication and your focus. I hope you guys have an absolutely awesome conference, and I hope you have a little bit better knowledge today in how an owner thinks and how you can bring incremental value to the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rick Werber.